Okay, let's dive into something that might just fundamentally change how you think about your health, your weight, and, well, why some people seem to just defy aging. Have you ever seen someone, well into their 90s who's just vibrant, energetic, sharp, and you kind of look at them and think, seriously? How are they doing that?
It's a really powerful image, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when you contrast it with what often feels like, well, the modern norm for getting older.
Right.
Managing multiple conditions, maybe a handful of pills every day, constant aches, struggling with energy, weight.
Yeah.
The sources for this deep dive, they're based on Dr. Gundry's Diet Evolution.
Yeah.
And they actually open with that exact, very striking contrast.
They really do. They paint this picture of Michelle, right?
Okay.
A woman at 96 years old who, according to the source, had the health markers of someone decades younger.
Mm-hmm.
Pristine blood pressure, efficient metabolism, perfect blood work, apparently looked incredible without any surgery, even outlived 2 husbands.
And the source says her secret, the thing she'd followed for 75 years, was simple.
Unbelievably simple.
Get rid of all white food and just never eat it again?
Just that one rule, for 3/4 of a century. Wow. Now, contrast that with the other picture the source paints. Maybe you know someone, or maybe it's, you personally,
Mm-hmm.
significantly heavier than you were younger, dealing with high blood pressure, cholesterol, maybe heading towards diabetes, chronic pain, skin issues, thinning hair.
Yeah, the list goes on.
The source suggests that if that sounds familiar, you might be showing the early signs of the very same processes that lead to really serious life-threatening diseases down the line.
And this huge difference, this gap between Michelle and that picture of modern decline, it points to a kind of fundamental mystery, doesn't it?
It does.
Why is there such a massive disparity in health and aging, often starting way earlier than we'd expect?
And the source offers a pretty radical answer.
It does, very radical.
And it basically boils down to this core, maybe slightly unsettling idea about your biodoors.
Your genes, they have their own agenda.
And that agenda is ancient, it's powerful, and it's like laser focused on reproduction and ensuring the survival of your genetic line.
Right. It's not primarily concerned with your long-term health or,
Yeah.
Your happiness as an individual,
Yeah.
especially once you've passed on those genes.
Exactly. The argument laid out in the source is that our modern food, our whole lifestyle, it's sending the wrong signals to this ancient genetic programming.
Totally wrong signal.
These signals essentially trick your genes into thinking conditions are harsh, maybe like winter's coming, triggering what the source calls killer genes.
Killer genes, yeah. Programs designed to, well, essentially get you out of the way once you've served your reproductive purpose.
It sounds harsh, but according to the source, this is the root cause of our modern epidemics of chronic disease and, aging too quickly.
So our mission in this deep dive,
Yeah.
tailored for you based on the material provided, is to really unpack this. It's a fascinating and, maybe challenging perspective.
Definitely challenging. We're going to explore how this ancient genetic autopilot supposedly runs the show.
Yeah.
Identify the modern inputs the source fingers as the culprits causing all the trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, look at what the source suggests you can actually do to change the message you're sending to your genes.
Okay, so let's start by really digging into this radical idea first.
Mm-hmm.
That your genetic code has this distinct mission, kind of separate from your conscious desires.
The source is pretty direct about this. It lays out 3 primary ancient goals for your genes, all centered around their own perpetuation, basically.
Okay.
First is simple, reproduce.
Makes sense.
Second, ensure the survival of your genetic copies your kids, your grandkids.
Also makes sense. Survival of the line.
And here's the part that might feel a bit jarring. Third, after you've done the first 2, get out of the way. Conserve resources for the next generation.
Oof. Yeah, that get out of the way part is really central to the source's argument.
It really is.
It stands in such stark contrast to our human desire, right?
Yeah.
To live as long and as healthily as we possibly can. So the source introduces this concept of a genetic autopilot. It's like this hidden system controlling countless processes in your body, cells, hormones, nervous system, everything, all without conscious thought.
Like behind the scenes.
Totally behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And its only directive, according to this view, is the survival and perpetuation of your genes.
The source uses that analogy, remember? Like the HAL 9000 computer from 2001, Space Odyssey.
Right, HAL, yeah.
The autopilot, your genes, it's designed to efficiently run the complex machine of your body, for its primary mission.
It's mission, not necessarily yours.
Exactly. So if you start sending it signals that conflict with that mission, like signals that maybe food is scarce or you're injured, it might start making decisions that aren't in your best interest as an individual because they serve the genetic mission.
And the source argues that your genes actively drive certain behaviors to fulfill these goals, like that almost overwhelming urge sometimes
Oh, yeah.
to seek out high-calorie foods, sugar, fat, salt, with like the least possible effort.
The drive-through line example. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Exactly. It's not presented as a moral failing or lack of willpower. According to the source, it's your ancient store fat for winter program just running on autopilot.
Because, back in evolutionary history, finding food packed with calories was hard work.
Super hard.
And packing on fat was absolutely essential for surviving lean times, winter, famine, and having enough energy reserves for reproduction. Our genes are still basically wired for that ancient world, even though for most of us today, that kind of constant food scarcity just isn't the reality.
Which leads us to one of the source's most provocative claims, I think.
Which one's that?
That aging and death, they aren't simply unavoidable wear and tear.
Oh.
They might actually be programs like software programs ordered by the genetic system to clear the stage, make way for newer, more vigorous copies of those genes.
Wow.
Ordered. Yeah. The source points to examples like certain animals, sharks, alligators that seem to have ways to stay perpetually youthful.
Right, they don't seem to age in the same way.
Or even cancer cell lines that can live indefinitely in a lab, long after the person they came from is gone.
So from this viewpoint, these killer genes aren't some kind of defect. They're part of the original design.
That's the argument. They get activated to remove individuals who, according to the genetic autopilot's interpretation, are no longer contributing or might be a drain on resources.
Like planned obsolescence, but for us.
Kind of, yeah. The source uses this analogy. If you become inactive, less vital, the autopilot might interpret this as, say, injury or weakness.
Okay.
And then it starts the shutdown process to conserve resources for others in the group.
That's intense.
It is. And this brings us to the source's argument about common modern diseases. Things like hypertension, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, arthritis, cancer.
All of the big ones.
Yeah. It contends these aren't just random misfortunes or bad luck. They're mechanisms triggered by these killer genes to achieve that shutdown, or maybe just make you easier prey, metaphorically speaking.
How so? Like, give an example.
Well, clogging arteries, for instance. The source suggests this might be the system initiating a fatal event to remove you.
Okay.
Or arthritis, making movement painful. That could limit your ability to gather resources or compete, signaling weakness.
Right. Makes you less viable in that ancient context.
Cancer, this is chilling, is presented as potentially a final, aggressive mechanism for consumption from within, literally eating you alive.
Jeez. That is a really stark interpretation. But the source also offers some anecdotes that hint maybe it's not all doom and gloom, right? Like reversibility.
Yeah, it does suggest these might be programs that can be altered. Remember Big Ed mentioned early on?
But yeah.
The source claims his severe arterial blockages actually reduced significantly with dietary changes.
Really?
Yeah. And another patient is said to have reversed a major carotid artery blockage using the diet evolution principles. These stories are used to suggest that maybe these conditions aren't irreversible fate.
More like signals the body is acting on, and you can change the signals.
That's the idea. The source also notes what it calls a 20-year rule,
20-year rule.
suggesting that diseases like hypertension often show up after about 2 decades of eating certain modern foods.
Ah, like a cumulative effect.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it argues that stress also strongly activates these killer genes. It cites animal studies where stressed rats ate compulsively and seemed to be genetically marked for removal from the gene pool.
Wow. Okay, so basically our body's got this ancient operating system running in the background, and it's interpreting modern life through the lens of like prehistoric survival, even to the point of programming its own shutdown.
That's the core premise. It's powerful stuff.
It really is. So what specifically in modern life is sending these problematic signals, according to the source? What are the culprits?
Right, that leads us to the main offenders the source identifies.
Yeah.
It really highlights the incredibly rapid shift in the human diet just over the last century or so.
It's been a massive change.
Huge. Our ancestors were often worried about starvation. You look at old photos, most people were pretty lean.
It's true.
Now, we face a crisis of overconsumption and obesity. It's flipped completely.
And the source argues this is largely because we've introduced foods that just completely confuse our ancient genetic programming.
Totally confuse it. It categorizes these problem foods primarily as white, beige, and brown foods,
Right, those categories.
along with certain killer fruits.
Killer fruits sounds dramatic.
Well, yeah. These are often processed items, things like sugar, refined flour, and grains, baked goods.
Bread, pasta.
Exactly. Sweet and starchy vegetables, tropical fruits, fruit juices, essentially anything that converts really rapidly to sugar in your body.
Okay, so it's the speed of sugar conversion.
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And the key insight from the source's perspective is why these are so problematic for your genes.
Why?
They don't look like the calorie-dense foods our ancestors might have found after a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Instead, their rapid conversion to sugar sends this powerful false signal to the genetic autopilot.
A false signal.
Yeah, winter is coming. Store fat immediately. That's the message it thinks it's getting.
Ah, so it triggers that store fat for winter program we talked about.
Exactly. It flips that switch.
Okay, let's look at some specific examples the source points to. White flour, for instance.
Right. Widely adopted after the steel roller mill came along in the late 1800s. That process stripped grains of vital micronutrients.
The bran and germ, yeah.
The source argues its widespread use correlates with the rapid appearance of vitamin deficiency diseases like pellagra and related deaths within just a generation.
Wow, that fast. Echoing that 20-year rule idea again.
Seems like it. Artificial and no-calorie sweeteners are also on the source's hit list.
Even though they have no calories.
Yep. The claim is that even without calories, the sweet taste alone still stimulates insulin release.
Oh, okay.
And in this genetic model, insulin isn't just about blood sugar. It's seen as a primary fat storage hormone.
So fake sweet still tells the body to store fat.
That's the argument. The source even offers that counter strategy, the pinch the packet idea. Gradually use less and less to try and break that sweetness signal connection.
Interesting. Now here's one of the source's really surprising, maybe controversial points. Milk.
Ah, milk.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely controversial in this context.
Conventionally, it's seen as healthy, right? Calcium, vitamin D.
But the source argues it's designed by nature specifically to make infant mammals grow incredibly fast.
Okay.
It points out that in most mammals, including historically most humans, a gene switches off lactase production after weaning, causes lactose intolerance.
Right. Most adults globally are lactose intolerant.
So the source provocatively suggests if you can drink milk without issue as an adult, you're essentially a recent genetic mutant.
Huh. Okay, that's one way to put it.
But more significantly, the source focuses on milk's insulin-like growth hormone, or IGF,
IGS, okay.
designed for rapid infant growth. The source claims that consuming it as an adult correlates with increased rates of certain cancers, breast, prostate, colon, and also atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries.
Really? Cancers and heart disease?
That's the connection the source draws. It even cites an example implying plaques can be found in the arteries of breastfed infants, suggesting it starts early. The source views milk's IGF as another signal promoting rapid growth, which might contribute to activating those killer genes in adults.
Wow. Okay, that's a very different take on milk. What about fats?
Trans fats get called out. Specifically, the source calls them fake fats.
Because they're man-made, basic.
Exactly. They didn't exist in nature, so your genes literally don't recognize them. The source suggests consuming them sends a signal of, like, inferior status or using damaged building materials.
Like trying to build a house with duct tape, I think was the analogy.
Something like that, yeah. And it links them to heart attacks within this genetic framework.
Okay. And fructose, fruit sugar.
Fructose is singled out as particularly problematic
Why fructose specifically?
because, according to the source, it bypasses the body's key satiety, signals hormones like insulin and leptin that usually tell you you're full.
Ah, so you can eat more of it without feeling satisfied.
Precisely. Which perfectly fits that winter is coming, eat everything you can model. And at the same time, it stimulates triglyceride formation.
Triglycerides, those are fat precursors, right?
A key fat precursor, yeah. Leads to fat storage.
And what about omega-6 fats? We hear a lot about omegas.
Right. Omega-6s are found heavily in grains and grain-fed animals. They dominate the modern Western diet.
Compared to omega-3s.
Exactly. The source links this imbalance, way too much omega-6, not enough omega-3, directly to widespread inflammation. And inflammation is another factor. The source connects strongly to activating those killer genes.
Okay, so the fat type really matters in this model.
Hugely. The source also provides a unique perspective on cholesterol, too.
Yeah, not just LDL bad, HDL good.
Not quite. It describes LDL not as inherently bad, but more like a transport truck delivering storage fat.
Okay, a delivery truck.
And HDL is like a recycling truck bringing fat back.
Got it.
So when your genetic autopilot is in that store fat for winter mode, triggered by modern foods.
Who wants to store, not recycle?
Exactly. The source argues it actively tells the body to manufacture more LDL delivery trucks and cut back on the HDL recycling trucks. Why recycle fat if you're desperately trying to store it for winter?
That actually makes a strange kind of sense within that framework.
It does. It also highlights LPA. That's LP little as a particularly dangerous type of LDL. But the source claims it can be lowered with specific diet changes, plus CoQ10 and niacin supplements.
Okay. And triglycerides.
The source states triglyceride levels correlate almost perfectly with how much of those white, beige-brown foods and certain fruits you eat.
Which fruits? You mentioned killer fruits earlier.
Yeah, things like very ripe bananas, watermelon, mangoes, grapes, fruits that are very high in sugar and fructose, especially out of their natural season or in large quantities.
Okay, so it's not just about food, though. The source also tackles exercise, right? And takes a controversial stance there, too.
It does. It argues that conventional steady-state cardio, like jogging or running long distances, is actually viewed by your ancient genes as the behavior of like low-ranking, unsuccessful animals.
Low ranking. How?
Animals that have to constantly forage for food over long distances, never quite finding enough. This type of activity, the source claims, is catabolic.
Catabolic, meaning it breaks down muscle.
Encourages muscle breakdown. Yeah. And it could even suppress the immune system. The source cites how marathon runners often get sick after a race.
Hmm.
In this genetic model, losing muscle might signal weakness or injury, potentially prompting that autopilot shutdown sequence.
So what kind of exercise does it recommend instead?
Sprinting. Short, fast bursts of intense activity.
Like interval training.
Kind of, yeah. It presents this as mimicking successful predators making a kill, or strong, muscular sprinters. An activity that builds muscle mass, it's anabolic.
Sending a signal of strength and success?
That's the idea. Move more like our ancestors might have bursts of intense activity to earn the calories you consume,
Right.
sending signals of strength, not chronic stress or weakness.
Okay. And sleep, that's another piece of the puzzle, right?
Absolute crucial signal, according to the source. Light exposure and how long you sleep significantly influence your hunger and satiety hormones, ghrelin and leptin.
Ghrelin makes you hungry, leptin makes you feel full.
Basically, yeah. And this is regulated by our circadian rhythm and something called the clock gene.
So how does sleep duration play in?
Less sleep, the source argues, mimics the shorter days of winter. It signals scarcity to the body.
Ah, winter's coming again.
Exactly. Prompting the body to stimulate ghrelin, making you hungrier, and potentially storing more fat.
And more sleep?
Signals abundance, safety, longer days. Helps keep those hormones balanced. The source even references studies linking longer sleep duration to reduced weight and increased longevity.
Like the ground squirrel hibernation example.
Where they live much longer during hibernation when their metabolism slows right down. Sleep is presented as deeply connected to these ancient survival signals.
Okay, so putting it all together, the source is arguing that a lot of core aspects of modern life, highly processed foods that spike sugar, unnatural fats, maybe even the wrong kind of exercise, not enough sleep, they're all sending powerful, ancient signals to our genes.
Signals meant for a completely different world. A world of scarcity, intense physical bursts, clear day-night cycles, and the absolute imperative of reproduction.
And these signals are inadvertently triggering programs that, in today's world of relative abundance, actually work against our individual health and longevity.
That's the crux of the argument.
Wow. It really makes you pause and think about the subtle, constant messages our bodies are receiving and interpreting.
Definitely.
So if modern living is sending all these wrong signals, what does the source suggest we can actually do about it? How do we change that conversation with our genes?
Well, that's exactly where Dr. Gundry's Diet Evolution program comes in, as presented in the source. It's framed explicitly as a way to change the message you're sending to that genetic autopilot.
And it emphasizes simplicity, right?
Yeah.
Not calorie counting.
No calorie counting, no complex glycemic index charts. The source likens it more to how healthy centenarians often eat, intuitively focusing on certain types of foods.
Okay, so what's the core principle then?
A big part of the solution revolves around plant phytochemicals, those unique compounds found in plants.
Phytochemicals.
The source introduces this concept of hormesis.
Hormesis. Sounds complicated.
The idea is basically some things are good for you because they're slightly bad for you.
Huh. How does that work?
Plants contain these defensive chemicals to protect themselves. When we eat them, these chemicals cause a mild, low-level stress to our cells.
A stress. That sounds bad.
But the argument is that this mild stress actually activates our own defensive pathways, including longevity genes, like a little workout for your cells.
Interesting, like exercising a muscle makes it stronger.
Kind of like that, yeah. And this contrasts sharply with modern diets, which rely on just a few, often highly processed plant foods, often grown in nutrient-depleted soil.
Compared to ancestral diets with hundreds of different plants.
Yeah. Exactly. Much more phytochemical diversity and signaling.
So this leads to the importance of green foods.
Absolutely central.
Yeah.
Leafy greens, other vegetables. The source highlights their sheer volume. They fill you up.
Right.
Their rich micronutrient and phytochemical profile. And, surprisingly to many, even their protein content.
Protein in greens.
Yeah, the source uses the example that calorie for calorie, broccoli apparently has more protein than filet mignon.
Get out. Really?
That's the claim. So the perspective shifts dramatically. Vegetables aren't just a side dish anymore.
They become the main event.
Exactly. The main dish, with protein as the side, eating abundant greens, the source argues, naturally fills you up, making it easier to cut back on those calorie-dense problem foods.
And it sends better signals to your genes.
Signals of abundance, nutrient richness, lots of those beneficial phytochemicals.
What about the protein strategy then, if protein is the side dish?
Well, the strategy within the source's program actually evolves. Initially, for rapid weight loss, it uses higher protein.
Why higher protein at first?
Partly because of its thermogenic effect. Your body burns more calories just digesting protein. The source uses the rabbit starvation analogy here, where lean meat alone isn't sustainable.
Okay. But that's not long term.
No. For long-term health and longevity, the source cautions against excessive animal protein.
Why the caution?
It links factors like potential iron overload, the heat generated digesting lots of protein, and possibly increased hunger hormones to high animal protein intake. It suggests transitioning to lower animal protein.
Balanced with.
Always balanced with lots and lots of green plants. It also references findings suggesting that around 15% fat intake might help prevent hunger hormone spikes after weight loss.
Interesting.
And notes that many successful long-term dieters, like those in the National Weight Control Registry, often naturally gravitate towards lower fat, higher carb, from veggies, fruits, approaches over time.
So it adapts. The source even uses those rhymes, right?
Yeah, like if you eat dark green, you'll become lean, or more olive oil, less turmoil, trying to make the core ideas stick.
Okay, so lots of greens, moderate protein. What about fats? Are all fats bad in this model?
Definitely not. The source stresses the body needs essential fatty acids, especially omega-3s. It calls these green fats from sources like algae and fish,
When contrasted with?
contrasted with manufactured trans fats, which are a definite no, and processed seed oils that are typically very high in omega-6s.
So which fats are good?
The source champions extra virgin olive oil, calls it longevity juice. Also flaxseed oil, hemp oil, walnut oil, avocado oil, emphasizing using them correctly, like not heating the delicate ones.
Right, heat can damage some oils.
Exactly. It even mentions a study where a diet higher in these kinds of beneficial fats, EVOO, canola, flax seeds, apparently performed significantly better for heart patients than a standard low-fat diet.
So fat quality over quantity again.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And given how overloaded modern diets are with omega-6s, the source strongly recommends molecularly distilled fish oil supplements to help rebalance that ratio and send the right signals.
Okay, beyond the food itself, the source talks about specific supplements too, right? To help fix the signals.
It does. It suggests certain supplements can be helpful in sort of repairing the communication lines with your genes.
Like what?
For instance, selenium, cinnamon, and chromium are recommended to help your cells hear the insulin signal better, basically tackling insulin resistance.
Yeah, improving sensitivity.
Right. Probiotics and prebiotics like FOS, which the source playfully calls Friends of Steve, are highlighted for supporting a healthy gut microbiome.
The gut connection.
Yeah, the source implies the gut plays a huge role in overall signaling. Then there's CoQ10 and niacin, mentioned specifically for helping lower that problematic LPA fat particle and supporting muscle function, especially if someone's on statins. Magnesium suggested for calming the nervous system, muscle function, blood pressure. And B vitamins, especially folic acid, for reducing homocysteine, a compound linked to inflammation and cardiovascular issues in this model.
So it's about targeted support, not just random multivitamins.
Exactly. Trying to undo some of the specific damage or signaling confusion caused by modern inputs.
The program itself has phases, doesn't it? Tear down, restoration.
Longevity, yeah. It's structured as a gradual evolution of your diet.
Hmm.
You start closer to maybe what people ate a century ago, then shift towards more of a hunter-gatherer style. And ultimately, the longevity phase focuses on an even earlier, predominantly plant-focused diet model.
Different goals for each phase.
Right. Moving from rapid initial weight loss and teardown to normalizing health markers and restoration, and then really maximizing longevity and metabolic efficiency in the final phase.
What about weight loss plateaus? People always hit those.
The source actually reframes plateaus. It views them not as a failure, but simply as having fewer fat cells, fewer customers demanding calories.
Ah, so your body just needs less fuel overall.
Exactly. It's a sign of success, meaning your calorie needs have decreased.
Okay. Can you give some examples of approved foods and things definitely to avoid?
Sure. Approved foods include things like wild-caught fish,
Yeah.
pastured poultry, certain fresh cheeses like goat or sheep cheese, some aged cheeses, but in moderation, unsweetened almond or soy milk,
Okay.
those beneficial oils we mentioned. Condiments, but only if they have no added sugar, mustard, vinegar, herbs, spices are great. Raw, unsalted nuts and seeds, though there are some specific exceptions like peanuts and cashews, which are limited.
And fruits. What about the killer fruits?
Friendly fruits are allowed, but generally after the initial phases, and mostly berries, maybe some green bananas or apples in season. The high-sugar killer fruits, ripe bananas, mangoes, pineapple, watermelon, grapes are largely avoided.
And the big avoids.
All the white foods, even if they aren't literally white, like potatoes or rice. So sugar, refined flour, pasta, bread, cereals,
Got it.
artificial sweeteners,
Milk.
certain starchy or sweet vegetables like corn, peas, parsnips in the early phases, trans fats, most processed seed oils like corn, soy, canola, unless specified otherwise, regular mayo, ranch dressing, basically anything highly processed, sugary, or sending those store fat signals.
It seems restrictive, but the source offers recipes, right? To show it's doable.
Oh yeah, it offers ideas to show how these principles translate into actual meals, adapting things like smoothies with greens, not tons of fruit, huge salads with protein, vegetable-based main dishes, modifying protein dishes to include way more greens. The focus is on making delicious food that also changes those genetic signals.
Okay. What about other things, like coffee, wine, chocolate?
Yeah, the source mentions other things that can actually be beneficial in moderation, again, because of that hormesis effect, the slight stress-activating longevity genes.
So it's okay.
Small amounts of red wine, specifically for the resveratrol, coffee, and dark chocolate like 70% cocoa or higher for the polyphenols.
But there's a patch, right?
Yes, the big caveat is consuming them without milk. The source claims milk proteins can bind to the beneficial polyphenols and inactivate them.
Interesting. And alternative sweeteners, besides the artificial ones.
Stevia and yacon syrup are mentioned as possibilities, but again, with caution. Use that pinch the packet idea. Use as little as possible to avoid sending strong sweetness signals.
Okay. So pulling this all back together, the core message from the source isn't just, here's another diet to lose weight.
Not at all. It's presented as something much more fundamental. It's about consciously altering the signals you send to your ancient genes every single day,
Aiming to activate the programs for health, vitality, long life.
instead of the ones that might be designed for rapid reproduction, followed by, well, getting out of the way.
Right. The source uses those patient stories, Jed, Robert, Melissa, Isaiah, Chip, Beverly.
Exactly. Not just to show weight loss, though that happened, but to illustrate the range of other health improvements they apparently saw.
Like what kind of things?
Reduced blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides going down, less pain, way more energy, people getting off medications, improved circulation, even reports of better relationships and sex life.
So broader systemic changes.
They're presented as evidence that the underlying genetic signals were actually changing for the better.
And Michelle, the 96-year-old from the beginning, who just avoided white food,
Yeah.
she becomes the source's kind of ultimate example, right?
Yeah, she stands as the embodiment of what activating those longevity genes through relatively simple, consistent dietary changes might look like over a whole lifetime, according to this perspective.
So this whole deep dive has really explored the source's viewpoint that aging, death, they might not just be random decline.
Potentially programmed responses,
Yeah.
Responses to the signals our bodies get from our environment, especially our food. It's a viewpoint that definitely challenges conventional ideas.
And proposes a very deliberate way to try and influence this ancient genetic autopilot through our daily choices, which leaves us with this final provocative thought, really stemming from the source's core premise. If your genes really do have their own ancient agenda, And if aging and death might be, at least partly, programmed responses to the signals you send them, what message are you sending your genetic autopilot with your food, your sleep, your activity right now, today?
And maybe more importantly, is that the message you wanted to hear about your future?
Something to definitely chew on.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into what is, I think we can agree, a truly fascinating and maybe unconventional perspective on health, weight, and longevity from your source material.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope exploring these concepts, even if they challenge some norms, has given you a new, maybe compelling way to think about the power you might have. The power to communicate with your own biology through what you eat and how you live.
We look forward to continuing to explore complex topics like this together in future deep dives.